For 17 standard cycles, the Velian Concord and the Korthax regime had torn at each other across the Orion Spur. Their war was one of bright, horrible lights in the distant sky, blooms of silent destruction visible through telescopes. To humanity, it was a dreadful, distant storm. Their choice, ratified again and again by the United Earth Council, was neutrality. They called it the Silent Garden.ina clean, sunlit office overlooking the green expanse of a rewild soul. Chairperson Lee Ji-woo reviewed the latest galactic briefings. The report spoke of fallen habitats and burned worlds. She felt a familiar, heavy sadness. On her desk, next to a data slate, was a small, real potted moss. It was a symbol of their path. While others waged war, Earth waged a campaign of healing. They turned deserts into forests, cleaned the ancient oceans, and built cities that lived in balance with the land. Their technological might was directed inward, toward sustainability and creation. To the warring factions, humanity seemed quaint, even weak. A people more interested in trees than territory. Ji-woo knew the truth. It was not weakness. It was a choice, a stubborn, fierce choice to not be pulled into the whirlpool of someone else's hatred. "We are not driftwood," she often told her council. "We are the anchor, far from Earth." In the cold, silent debris field that was the asteroid belt, Kim Tae-hyun floated in his salvage ship, the Morning Calm. The war's aftermath was his workplace. He was a drift hunter, collecting the scrap metal, broken hull plating, and occasionally intact components that the battling fleets left in their wake. It was dangerous, lonely work, but it kept him away from people, which was how he preferred it. His only companion was the ship's AI, Nuri, her voice a calm, synthetic hum in the cockpit. "Energy signature at 274 Mark 8, Nuri announced. "Likely a coolant drive from a Velian frigate. Market value is low." "We're not picky today," Tae-hyun said, his eyes on the scanner. His face was lean, his hands scarred from old burns and sharp edges. He had been a soldier once in Earth's Defense Force, but that was a lifetime ago. The uniform felt like a skin he had shed. As the Morning Calm maneuvered closer, the scanner chimed with a different tone. "Additional reading," Nuri said. "It is not just debris. It is a full vessel. A Velian Scout-class ship. Life signs are 0. Power signature is fading. A derelict. This was more valuable but also more risky. Could be booby-trapped or have unstable reactors." Tae-hyun let out a slow breath. "Bring us in. Slow and careful." The scout ship was a grim sight. A hole was torn in its side. The edges melted smooth from a Korthax energy lance. Tae-hyun sealed his environment suit and stepped from his airlock onto the dead vessel. His boots magnetized to the deck with soft thuds. The interior was a tomb, frozen and dark, lit only by the beam on his helmet. He moved toward the command deck, passing the still, frost-covered forms of the Velian crew. He did not look at their faces. The main console was dead, but the ship's data core, hardened for survival, still glowed with a faint blue light. Tae-hyun hooked a portable reader to it. Files downloaded. Most were routine navigational logs, but one, marked with high-priority encryption now broken by damage, was a captain's final log. Tae-hyun played it. The Velian captain's face, etched with fear and exhaustion, flickered on his small screen. Confirmed the Korthax weapon is not just theoretical. They call it the Starsinger. It doesn't destroy ships. It destabilizes a star's core, causing a selective supernova pulse, a directed stellar murder. Our intelligence places the prototype near the gray zone in Sector Theta 9. If we do not stop, the recording ended abruptly, cut off by whatever catastrophe had claimed the ship. Tae-hyun stood in the silent dark, the weight of the information settling on him. This was not just scrap. This was a secret that could change the war, or pull Earth into it. Back on the Morning Calm, he stored the data core in a secure locker. He looked at Nuri's interface light. "Plot a course for Mars Orbital Command. Fastest possible route. This deviates from our scheduled salvage run," Nuri noted. "I know," Tae-hyun said, staring at the endless starfield outside his viewport. The peaceful, distant lights seemed to mock him. The quiet garden felt very, very far away. He was bringing a piece of the fire home with him, and he had a terrible feeling that this time, the garden might not be able to ignore it. The journey to Mars was tense and quiet. Kim Tae-hyun spent the time running every diagnostic he could on the Velian data core. The log was real. The technical schematics for something called the Star Singer were fragmentary but horrifying. It described a resonance weapon that could, in theory, make a star convulse. He did not sleep much. Mars Orbital Command was a sprawling, glittering ring of steel and light. It buzzed with civilian traffic and the smooth, silent movements of Earth's peacekeeping fleet. Sleek ships designed for patrol and rescue, not for war. As the morning calm was guided into a docking bay, Tae-hyun felt a deep unease. The clean, orderly peace of this place felt fragile against the dark truth in his hold. He was met by a pair of serious-faced officers in the crisp blue uniforms of the security division. They escorted him, without a word, through bright corridors to a secure debriefing room. There, he handed over the data core. For hours, he answered questions from officials on screens, their faces calm and neutral. They thanked him for his diligence. They told him the information would be processed through the proper channels. He was given a receipt for the core and a modest finder's fee was deposited into his account. The process was efficient, polite, and utterly cold. 2 days later, Chairperson Lee Ji-woo sat at the head of a long table in a secure council chamber beneath Seoul. The faces around her were worried. On the main display, the final moments of the Velian captain played out, followed by the weapon schematics. When it ended, the room was silent. "The potential is catastrophic," said the head of military research, a man named Park. "If the Korthax can induce controlled stellar collapse, it is a threat to all life in any system they target." Finished the science minister. Ji-woo steepled her fingers, her gaze on the frozen image of the terrified Velian. "And what is the source's veracity? A single damaged log from a dead ship in a war built on lies and propaganda. Our analysis suggests 70% reliability," Park admitted. "But the consequences of it being true are too high to ignore. We must consider a shift in our defensive posture. A quiet warning to the Korthax, perhaps through back channels." "A warning is a step onto a path," Ji-woo said, her voice low but firm. "A path that ends with our ships burning beside Velian ones. This Star Singer may be real, or it may be a ghost story, a spark meant to draw us into the fire." She looked at each of them. "Our policy, the Silent Garden, is not born from ignorance. It is born from wisdom. We see the whirlpool and we choose not to sail closer. We anchor here." She made her decision. "We will file the data. We will monitor. We will not provoke, and we will not be provoked by shadows. Our strength is in our silence, in our growth. We are not driftwood to be swept into their current." The order was sent. Earth's defense level remained at a vigilant but peaceful green. The Seoul Defense Grid, a beautiful network of orbital platforms that regulated climate and shielded against asteroids, hummed softly. It was a tool of life. On one of those platforms, engineer Park Ji-min reviewed a gravity lensing array. She was small, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her world was one of numbers, stability, and harmony. The grid was her life's work, a shield to nurture, not to threaten. A calm alert flashed on her console, a routine notice about updated threat assessment files, including unverified data on potential superweapons. She skimmed it, noted the low confidence rating, and archived it. Her job was to keep the shield strong for incoming supply ships and meteor showers, not for warships. Meanwhile, on the diplomatic front, Choi Min-soo was drowning in tension. In a neutral station orbiting a dead star, he met with a Korthax legate, a being of sharp angles and cold, gray flesh. The legate's voice was like grinding stones. "Your neutrality is a fiction," the legate stated. "You harvest the wreckage of our victories. You profit from our conflict." Min-soo kept his face a calm mask. "We harvest wreckage that would become hazards. We profit from recycling, yes. We build gardens from scrap. This is not an act of war. It is an act of cleaning." The legate sneered. "You hide behind this gardening. You are either weak or you are waiting. The Velians whisper to you, do they not? They seek to pull you to their side. Earth speaks for itself, Minsu replied, his tone even. We choose no side but that of continued existence. The meeting ended with no progress, only more mistrust. Later, with a Velian envoy who wept crystalline tears about lost colonies, Minsu heard the same pressure in a different tone, a plea for the moral strength of humanity to join the righteous fight. He returned to his quarters, exhausted. He looked at a picture of his family on a hiking trail in the Siraxan Mountains, green and vibrant and alive. He was fighting to keep that world untouched, but the pressure from both sides was becoming a vice. They all saw Earth's silence as either an opportunity or an insult. No one understood it was a declaration. Back in the asteroid belt, Taehyun received the official thank you note from the Council and the notice that the data was under ongoing evaluation. He read it on the cockpit screen of the morning comm, floating in the dark. Nuri monitored his vitals. Your heart rate and stress indicators are elevated, Nuri observed. Taehyun deleted the message. He looked out at the field of debris, the shattered remnants of pride and anger. He had brought them a spark from the galactic fire, and they had carefully, politely, placed it in a drawer. He had done his duty. But as he powered up the thrusters to resume his salvage run, the ghost of the Velian captain's terrified face seemed to hang in the dark between the stars. He felt, in his bones, that the fire was not done with them yet. The garden was quiet, but the storm was still raging, and it was moving on a wind no one could control. The silent garden held its breath. Weeks passed. Kim Taehyun returned to his work, but the quiet felt different now. He scanned the debris fields with a new tension, listening for whispers of a weapon called the Starsinger. He heard nothing but the usual silence of dead ships that on the edge of explored space, near the gas giant Jupiter, the storm was gathering. A damaged Velian command fleet, running from a Korthax victory, made a desperate gamble. They plotted a course through the complex gravity wells of Jupiter's moons, hoping to hide and limp home. Their navigational data was corrupted, a final act of sabotage by a fallen Velian spy. The course they plotted was a secret, but the spy had also planted a ghost. A false signal, a digital phantom, suggesting a hidden Velian resupply base was being built in the sensor shadow of Callisto. The Korthax Armada, fueled by the thrill of the chase, followed. They were led by Battle Director Krall, a being of pure martial fury. He saw the Velians as rats to be flushed and crushed. The ghost signal on Callisto was the perfect trap. His tactical officers warned of slight anomalies in the data, but Krall dismissed them. The Velians were cunning. They would hide behind a civilian outpost, banking on the enemy's restraint. It was a coward's move, he thought. He would reward it with absolute fire. He gave the order. Target the coordinates on Callisto. Full orbital barrage. Leave nothing. On Callisto, it was the middle of the sleep shift. The research colony was a cluster of silver domes nestled in the icy plain, a place of quiet wonder. Here, scientists from Earth studied the vast, dark ocean beneath the moon's frozen crust. They searched for alien microbes, for secrets of life in the dark. They were geologists like Dr. Hwansung and biologists like Dr. Yuna Park. They were engineers and teachers. Their families were with them. Children slept in warm bunks, dreaming of Earth summers and the strange, beautiful ice formations outside their windows. Park Jimin, back on the Mars orbital platform, was running a standard diagnostic on the Seoul Defense Grid Sector 4, which included Jupiter's orbital space. The grid was a peaceful network, but it was also a powerful sensor web. She saw the sudden, violent energy spike on her screen. A massive power buildup from multiple Korthax capital ships, their weapon ports aligning. The targeting vectors painted not the fleeing Velian ships, but the icy surface of Callisto. Her blood went cold. She triggered the highest priority alert, sending a screaming data packet to Earth Command and directly to the colony. Evacuate. Orbital strike detected. 0 seconds. The words flashed in red on Callisto. Sirens wailed. A terrible sound in the thin air. People stumbled from their beds, confused, scared. Dr. Hwan grabbed his daughter. Dr. Yuna reached for her data drives, then turned for the children's wing. There was no time. The light from the orbital strike came first, filling the domes with a blinding, actinic white, casting long, sharp shadows of running people onto the walls. Then the world ended. The barrage was not a single shot, but a storm. Plasma beams, designed to crack battleship armor, tore into the ice. Kinetic rods, moving at a fraction of light speed, impacted with the force of ancient asteroids. The domes vanished in flashes of vaporized metal and ice. The ground shook, then opened. The ancient ocean beneath, suddenly exposed to vacuum and fire, exploded into a superheated geyser that froze instantly into a glittering, grotesque cloud of ice crystals and debris. The attack lasted 47 seconds. When the fire stopped, the research colony was gone. In its place was a raw, smoldering crater. Scattered signals from emergency beacons inside pressure suits blinked, then faded, one by one, into the relentless cold. On the Korthax command ship, Battle Director Krall watched the sensor feed. The energy signatures were wrong. There were no military shield flares, no weapon core detonations. There were only the brief, terrible signals of life support systems snuffing out, thousands of them. A secondary scan flickered on his screen, identifying the debris field. Human alloy compositions, Earth-style organic residues, the shredded remains of learning modules for children. His tactical officer turned, its face pale. Director, the Velian ghost signal. It has vanished. Our primary targets have jumped to warp. The colony, it was not military. It was a life science outpost. Human. Krall stood perfectly still. He felt no remorse, only a cold, dawning calculation. He had not killed soldiers. He had killed gardeners. He had broken a neutral world's peaceful place. He knew what this meant. A regrettable error, he said, his voice hollow. The humans hid behind their own civilians. A cowardly ploy. Maintain battle readiness. On Mars, Park Jimin stared at her screen. The sensor feeds showed the before and after. The warm, living dots of life signs were gone, replaced by the cold thermal scar of the impact. The final, raw transmission from the colony played on a loop in her head, a fragment of a child's cry, cut off by static. Her hands were trembling. She felt the neat, orderly world of her numbers and systems crack apart, and his ship. Taehyun received the emergency broadcast. It was not a formal report. It was a raw, open-channel scream of data meant for any human vessel. It showed the Korthax ships firing. It showed the destruction. It listed the names of the missing as they were confirmed. He saw the names Juan and Park. He did not know them, but they were his people. They were from the garden. He sat in his pilot's chair. The silence of the cockpit now a screaming void. The quiet, careful logic of the council. The policy of the silent garden. It all evaporated in those 47 seconds of fire. They had not been swept into the current. The current had risen up and drowned a part of their home. Chairperson Lee Ji-woo was awakened with the news. She watched the footage in her dark office, alone. She saw the peaceful domes, then the light, then the nothing. She listened to the last, broken sounds. She did not cry. Her face, lit by the ghastly images, became like stone. She looked at the small pot of moss on her desk, a tiny piece of the garden she had sworn to protect. A piece of it had just been burned to ash. The message from Battle Director Krall arrived, full of cold justifications and accusations of Velian deception. It ended with a standard line, regrettable collateral damage. Ji-woo stood up. She walked to the window and looked out at the sleeping, green city below. The storm was no longer distant. It had reached in and taken what it wanted. The silence was over. The silence did not last. It shattered into a roar of grief. The images from Callisto played on every screen across Earth and its colonies. The smiling faces of researchers, the laughter of children in the colony's school, the peaceful icy landscape, all cut to the blinding light and the terrible, final static. The number, 4,327, was not a statistic. It was a wound that in the council chambers beneath Seoul. There was no debate. Chairperson Lee Ji-woo stood before her advisors, her ministers, and the Global Assembly via live feed. Her face, usually a mask of calm resolve, was pale and hard. The pot of moss was gone from her desk, placed on a shelf behind her. Her hands were flat on the polished surface. "They attacked a garden of knowledge," she said. Her voice was clear, cold, and carried across the silent room and to billions of listeners. "They attacked children. They attacked our future. They have mistaken our silence for absence. They have mistaken our choice for weakness." She looked directly into the camera, her eyes like dark stone. "The policy of the Silent Garden is ended. It was ended the moment they fired on Callisto. We do not seek their war, but we will now answer it. We will show them the difference between a people who choose peace and a people who cannot fight." She gave the order. Across the solar system, a single command code was activated. It was not a code for war. It was a code for transformation. On Mars, Park Jimin received the command. Her tears were dry now, burned away by a cold, focused anger. Her fingers flew across her console. The Sol Defense Grid was a beautiful, delicate network of orbital platforms that gently managed sunlight, deflected asteroids, and nurtured climate. With a series of commands, she put it to sleep. Then, she began waking up its other functions. The platforms shifted. Solar collectors folded away. Hidden panels slid open. Harmonic projectors, designed to gently nudge space debris, realigned. Gravity lensing arrays, used to help ships with efficient travel, focused into tight, powerful beams. The grid did not look like a weapon. It still gleamed peacefully in the sunlight. But its purpose had changed. It was no longer a shield for nurture. It was a shield for defense. A cage of invisible force. Kim Taehyun received a different kind of message. It was not from the Salvage Guild. It was a direct mobilization order from the Earth Defense Force, reactivating his old commission. A set of coordinates flashed on his screen. A secret naval depot hidden in the rings of Saturn. Attached was a new designation for the morning calm. Scout Ship EDF-77. He did not hesitate. He input the coordinates. Nuri, the AI, acknowledged the new flight path without comment. As the ship turned, Taehyun looked back at the debris field one last time. He was done collecting the pieces of other people's fights. Now he would help ensure the fight came to them. Across Earth, the change was not one of panic, but of chilling purpose. Shipyards that built colony vessels and deep space research probes switched their assembly lines. Their new designs were not sleek explorers, but angular, functional frames. They were not warships in the Korthax or Velian style. They had no giant cannons or glittering energy lances. They were toolboxes on thrusters, equipped with powerful tractor beams, precision-cutting lasers, and sophisticated field disruptors. All technology developed for mining, construction, and salvage. The galaxy watched, stunned. They expected humanity to scream, to lash out with clumsy, new-made weapons, to join the Velians in their desperate war. They did not expect this cold, swift metamorphosis. Battle Director Krall received the first proof of his error. His Armada, still holding position near Jupiter, detected the change in the Sol Defense Grid's energy signature. It was a subtle shift, but to his sensors, it was as if a sleeping giant had opened its eyes. Then, a direct communication arrived from Earth. It was not from a military commander, but from Chairperson Ji-woo. Her image was calm. Battle Director Krall, you have committed an act of mass murder against a neutral civilian target. You have declared war on life itself. Your fleet is now in restricted space. You will power down your weapons and engines. You will submit to the custody of the United Earth Council. You have 1 hour to comply. Krall stared at the message, then let out a harsh, grating sound that was his version of a laugh. Submit? To these gardeners? This was a bluff, a pathetic attempt at face-saving. He had seen their technology. It was for digging in dirt. Ignore it, he told his crew. Prepare to jump to warp. We are leaving this system. His navigation officer spoke up, voice tense. Director, the gravity fields around us. They are becoming chaotic. Our warp calculations are failing. It is as if space itself is nodding. Krall looked at his own screen. The smooth fabric of space around Jupiter, usually predictable, was shimmering with unnatural gravity tides. The The soul grid was not firing. It was braiding. It was using the natural gravity of the gas giant and weaving it into a net on the bridge of the newly designated EDF-77. Taehyun arrived at the secret depot. His old, battered salvage ship was being fitted with new modules, non-lethal field disruptors and advanced sensor stealth. A young technician handed him a patch for his jacket. It showed a simple design, a green sprout breaking through cracked concrete. The word beneath it read, Gardner. He looked at it, then pinned it on. The word did not mean peacekeeper anymore. It meant something else. It meant one who removes weeds. It means one who protects the growth. The hour ticked down. In her office, Ji-woo watched the clock. She knew the Korthax would not submit. They only understood force, but they did not understand the kind of force Earth would use. She thought of the children on Callisto. She thought of the green, quiet Earth below. The storm had come into the garden. Now the gardeners would have to deal with the storm, not with rage, but with the terrible, precise patience of someone defending their home. When the hour ended, she gave the second order. It was a single word to the fleet and to Park Ji-min at the grid control. Begin. The Korthax Armada did not understand the war they had started. Battle Director Krall barked orders to charge their main cannons and target the nearest Earth defense platform. The giant ships turned, their hulls glowing with angry red light. They expected to fight a battle of firepower. They did not expect the fight they got. Park Ji-min on the Mars control hub initiated the first move. She did not fire a weapon. She sent a pulse from the grid. It was a specific, calibrated harmonic frequency, originally designed to safely break apart large asteroids for mining. The pulse washed over the lead Korthax battleship. On the Korthax bridge, alarm screamed. The sound was not from outside. It was from inside the ship. The entire hull began to vibrate with a deep, resonant hum. The vibration traveled through the deck plates, through the bulkheads. It found the natural frequency of the ship's primary power conduit, a massive crystal column that channeled energy from the reactor. The hum grew louder, a low C-sharp that shook teeth and rattled tools. "Stabilize it!" Krall yelled. They could not. The vibration intensified, tuned with impossible precision by the grid's sensors. With a sound like a giant bell being struck, the power conduit shattered. Not exploded, shattered, from the inside out. The red glow of the weapons died instantly. The battleship went dark, its engines sputtering into silence. It was not destroyed. It was disabled. A floating, inert piece of metal. Krall stared in disbelief. What was that? A resonance weapon? Target its source. Fire! But targeting the grid was impossible. The platforms were small, numerous, and their energy signatures were now diffuse, blending with the natural solar radiation. They were firing with tools, not guns, and the tools were invisible. Then the real work began. Small, unassuming human vessels, like Taehyun's morning calm, darted into the fray. They did not fly in attack formations. They moved like worker bees or like surgeons. They were the gardeners. Taehyun's orders flashed on his screen. Target, Korthax battlecruiser Gar's Wrath. Objective, induce plasma drive coagulation. Nuri highlighted the ship's massive engine array. The technology was familiar to him. He had salvaged dozens of similar drives from wrecks. He knew their weak points not as a soldier, but as a mechanic. He flew not at the ship, but near its engine wash. The morning calm released a canister from its modified salvage arm. It was not a bomb. It was a dense cloud of pre-programmed nanites, designed for deep space repair and molecular binding. The microscopic machines swept into the battlecruiser's drive plume, did what they were made to do. They repaired. They identified the superheated plasma stream as a fault and began to bind it together, to solidify it on the Gar's Wrath. The engineers panicked. Their plasma drives were suddenly cooling and hardening from the inside, like arteries clogging with cement. Warnings flashed. Drive conversion. Thrust failing. The great ship shuddered and began to drift, its power bleeding away into useless, solidifying light. Another Gardner ship, a former heavy mining vessel, latched onto a Korthax destroyer with a powerful tractor beam. Instead of pulling it, the beam shifted to a rapid, precise push-pull frequency. It vibrated the enemy ship's hull at the exact frequency to loosen every external weapon mount. Across the destroyer, turrets and missile pods simply shook free from their bolts and floated away into space. Leaving the ship as harmless as a peeled fruit, Krall's armada was not being destroyed. It was being dismantled. It was being taken apart with a quiet, terrifying expertise. His ships fired their energy lances, but the beams were bent away by gravity lenses in the grid, scattering harmlessly. They launched missiles, only to see them caught in sudden, localized gravity wells that crushed them into silent balls of scrap. A broadcast from Earth played on every open channel, on loop. It showed the vibrant forests of Earth, the clean oceans, the cities in harmony with nature. Then it showed the burning crater on Callisto. The voice was Choi Min-soo, the diplomat, his tone flat and cold. You fight for territory. You fight for resources. You fight for pride. We do not. We fight for life. You have shown you do not understand its value. We will now teach you. Lesson 1. You are a machine. And we are the mechanics. Krall, trapped on his bridge, felt a new kind of fear. This was not combat. It was a humiliation. His mighty armada was being turned into a useless, broken fleet by beings who used tools he considered beneath notice. He watched a Gardner ship, smaller than one of his fighters, use a precision laser to slice through the primary sensor array of his flagship. The laser was the kind used for cutting durasteel in shipyards. Return fire. Any target. He screamed. An officer turned, his face ashen. We have no viable targets, Director. Their vessels are too small, too fast. Their weapons are not weapons. Our systems do not know how to counter them. Suddenly, the main view screen flickered. The image of Chairperson Lee Ji-woo appeared. She sat in her simple office, the green world visible behind her. Battle Director Krall, your hour to surrender has passed. You are now being immobilized. Your violence is a toxin in this system. We are containing it. You have one final choice. Power down completely, or we will be forced to escalate our pruning. Krall's hand shook with fury. He reached for the console to cut the transmission. Before he could, the lights on his bridge dimmed. A new, deeper vibration began to thrum through the ship. The Gardeners had found the frequency of his life support systems. He looked at the faces of his crew. He saw not fear of death, but confusion. They knew how to die in a blast of glory. They did not know how to die because the air stopped moving. The humans were not just defeating them. They were proving their entire way of war was obsolete. In the cockpit of the morning comm, Taehyun watched a Korthax carrier drift silently, its every system frozen by a targeted EMP from a grid platform. He felt no thrill of victory. He felt the grim satisfaction of a necessary job. He was cleaning up a dangerous mess. The patch on his jacket, the green sprout, felt heavy. They were not warriors. They were protectors. And they were very, very good at it. The message was being sent not just to the Korthax but to the watching galaxy. Humanity was not harmless. They were careful. And you did not want them to stop being careful. The Korthax armada was trapped in the silent cage of Jupiter's orbit. They were not wrecked. They were humiliated. Ship by ship, system by system, they had been made useless. Battle Director Krall sat on his command chair, now just a chair, as the power on his flagship faded to emergency lights. The deep, unsettling hum of Earth's gravity webs pressed against the hull, a constant reminder of his helplessness. He had ordered his soldiers to prepare for boarding actions. For the close quarters bloodshed they understood. But no boarding craft came. The human vessels, the Gardeners, simply continued their quiet, precise work. One of his surviving cruisers tried a desperate, brute force engine burn to break free. The Sol defense grid responded not with a counterblast, but by tightening the gravitational knot around that specific ship. The cruiser's own thrust was turned against it, compressing the vessel slowly, gently, into a dense, crumpled ball of metal. There was no explosion, just the silent, terrifying sound of bending bulkheads on the open comms, then silence. This was the lesson. It was not delivered with rage, but with the cold, patient certainty of a law of physics. A new broadcast flooded the Korthax comms. It was not a demand. It was a data stream. Park Jimin, her anger honed to a sharp point, directed the transmission. It showed the environmental impact reports of the Korthax-Velian War. It was not about lost ships or dead soldiers. It was about poisoned nebulae where stellar nurseries had once glowed. It was about shattered planets where biospheres had taken 1 billion years to form, now reduced to radioactive dust. It showed the silent, expanding graves of dead worlds. The voiceover was calm, almost academic. The cost of your war, measured in lost life, not soldier life but all life. The microbial, the fungal, the nascent. You burn libraries of evolution for tactical advantage. To the Korthax rank and file, warriors who believed they fought for glory and survival, these images were confusing, then unsettling. They had never considered the enemy's homeworld as anything but a target. They had never thought of the silent, empty worlds between stars as anything but space to cross. The humans made them see the galaxy as a living garden, and their war as a wildfire. On the bridge of the morning calm, Taehyun received a direct order. He was to approach the flagship. A single ship, a former salvage hauler, moving toward the crippled Korthax Leviathan. This is a high-risk maneuver, Nuri stated. I know, Taehyun said. He guided his small ship close, until the scarred, angular bulk of the Korthax command ship filled his viewport. He opened a laser-tight communication line. A single channel to Krall's bridge. Krall's face appeared on the screen, twisted with fury and shame. Come to gloat, human? Or to finally show you have the stomach for real killing? Taehyun looked at him, his own face tired and clean of hatred. No. I'm here to show you what you broke. He transmitted a file. It was not from Callisto. It was older. It was a simple video from the research colony's school. Human and alien children from a dozen species, including a young Velian, were working together on a project. They were growing a simple moss in a tray of Callisto ice, testing its resilience. They were laughing. One human child, a little girl, was explaining the process to the Velian child with bright, excited eyes. The video ended.
Taehyun spoke quietly.
That was your target. That was your great military victory. We are not warriors, Director. We are caretakers. You fired on the caretakers. So now we have to care for you. Even you. He cut the transmission. His job was done. The message was delivered. Back on Earth, Chairperson Lee Ji-woo prepared her own communication. She sat at her desk, the green of Earth behind her. She addressed not just Krall but the entire Korthax High Command and the watching Velian Concord and the wider galaxy. Battle Director Krall, you are defeated, not by a greater weapon but by a greater principle. Your violence is unsustainable. It is a dead-end tool. You are now evidence of that. She leaned forward slightly, her gaze piercing the screen. You have two choices. You can order the self-destruction of your remaining vessels in a final, pointless act of pride. You will add the names of your own crew to the death count you started at Callisto. Their blood will be on your hands, too. She paused, letting the silence hang. Or you can power down every remaining system. You will surrender to our custody. Your crews will be treated as prisoners of war, with the dignity you denied our civilians. Your ships will be disassembled, and their materials will be used to rebuild what you destroyed. You will help us heal the crater on Callisto. On his dark bridge, Krall felt the eyes of his crew on him. He saw not fear of the humans, but a dawning horror of himself. He saw the child in the video laughing. He saw the numbers of the dead on Callisto. He saw his mighty fleet, turned into silent, frozen sculptures by people who used gravity and sound as tools. The order to self-destruct was on his lips. It was the Korthax way. Better ruin than capture. He looked at his first officer, a veteran of 20 campaigns. The officer gave a slight, almost imperceptible shake of his head. It was not defiance. It was exhaustion. It was the look of a soldier who finally saw the battlefield for the barren, lifeless place it was. Krall's shoulders slumped. The fire went out of his eyes. The humans had not just beaten their technology. They had broken their story. The story that war was glory. The story that destruction was strength. He opened the fleet-wide channel. His voice was a dry rasp, stripped of all its former power. All vessels. This is the battle director. Stand down. Power down all weapons, all engines, all defensive systems. Do not resist the human. The gardener vessels. He swallowed, the words ash in his mouth. The battle is over. In the control hub on Mars, Park Ji-min watched the energy signatures of the Korthax Armada blink out, one by one, like lights going off in a city going to sleep. The tense, angry lines on her screens softened. The grid's aggressive harmonics shifted back to a gentle, monitoring hum. She did not cheer. She put her head in her hands for a moment, thinking of the crater on Callisto, thinking of the Moss experiment that would never be finished. This was not victory. It was the end of the destruction. The hard work of healing, she knew, was just beginning. But for the first time since the attack, she felt the world might be quiet enough to start. The silence that returned to the space around Jupiter was different. It was not the quiet of absence or of peace. It was the quiet of a job finished. The Korthax Armada hung motionless, dark and powerless. Small gardener vessels moved among them like worker ants, attaching neutralizer pods to engines and command decks, ensuring they stayed that way. There was no cheering on Earth. No parades. Instead, there were quiet ceremonies of remembrance for the lost of Callisto. Their names were read aloud in every city, on every colony. The crater on the moon was not covered up. It was left as it was, a stark, dark scar. A memorial was built on its rim. A simple dome of clear crystal, filled with earth soil and growing green plants, a tiny pocket of the garden looking into the wound. The Velian Concord, which had watched the entire conflict in stunned disbelief, sent a new envoy. He was not weeping or pleading. He was cautious, respectful. He met with Choi Min-soo on a neutral station. "Your methods were unforeseen," the Velian said, his crystalline fingers trembling slightly. "You have changed the grammar of conflict." Min-soo nodded. "We did not want to. We were forced to write a new sentence. We hope it is the last one of its kind." He pushed a data slate across the table. It contained the terms of the new armistice, but it was not called a peace treaty. It was called the Callisto Principles. The document was simple. Its core idea was that the only justifiable cause for war was the direct defense of life, of biospheres, of civilian populations, of growing things. Territory, resources, and political slights were not sufficient reasons. Earth, as the author and enforcer of these principles, would act as the guarantor. Any faction breaking them would face not total war, but the same precise, dismantling containment the Korthax had experienced. The Velian read it, his large eyes widening. It was not a victory for their side. It was a victory for a side that hadn't existed before. A side for the garden itself. After a long moment, he agreed. The Korthax High Command, reeling from the loss of an entire armada and the shocking footage broadcast to their people, had no choice but to agree as well. The war, for now, was over. On Callisto, the reconstruction was slow and solemn. Kim Tae-hyun's morning calm was there, but it was not armed anymore. Its salvage arms were now used to carefully clear wreckage, to lift the memorial dome into place. He worked alongside former Korthax prisoners, their war gear exchanged for simple work suits. They did not speak much. They worked. One day, a young Korthax engineer, struggling with a human tool, was shown the proper grip by Tae-hyun. It was a small, silent moment. Not forgiveness, not friendship, but an acknowledgement of a shared, difficult task. Park Ji-min returned to the Seoul defense grid, but her work had changed. The grid's new, potent capabilities were not deleted. They were archived, a set of tools put back on a high shelf, hoped never to be used again. Her focus returned to its original purpose: climate stewardship and protecting shipping lanes from asteroids. But the memory of its power hummed quietly in the code, a permanent reminder. Weeks later, Chairperson Lee Ji-woo visited Callisto. She stood inside the Crystal Memorial Dome, the harsh, airless crater on one side, the vibrant, green plants on the other. Taehyun and Jimin were there. Having been asked to meet her, Jiwoo did not give a speech. She simply stood with them, looking out at the stars. "We asked for a garden," she said finally, her voice soft. "They gave us a battlefield. So we had to become gardeners of a harder soil." She turned to them. "The galaxy is watching us now. They are afraid of our tools. But we must make them understand the purpose. We will not be their police. We will be their reminder. A reminder that growth is harder than destruction and more valuable." Taehyun looked at the new patch on his jacket. It was the same sprout, but now the cracked concrete was repaired, making way for roots. "What do we do now?" he asked. "We go back to work," Jiwoo said. "But our work has a new dimension. We grow, we heal, and we are very, very watchful." She offered a small, weary smile. "The silent garden is gone, but the careful garden remains. It must." As their shuttle left Callisto, Taehyun looked back. The crystal dome glittered like a tear on the moon's face. He thought of the little girl in the video, explaining Moss to her friend. That was what they had fought for. Not for land or for glory, but for the right of that moment to exist. For the right to be curious and gentle. In a universe that seemed to favor the loud and the destructive, he knew the galaxy's old fires still smoldered. Greed and pride were not gone. But a new standard had been set. A line had been drawn in the stellar dust. Earth had not sought to rule. It had simply demonstrated, with terrible clarity, the cost of violating its space, its people, its peace. The message had been received. Humanity was not the galaxy's warrior. They were its stubborn, meticulous, and suddenly formidable gardeners. And woe to anyone who mistook their pruning shears for anything less than what they were. The tools used to carefully, decisively remove a blight. The quiet, after all, could be the most powerful sound of all.